I crashed her surprise party and found out I was the only one surprised. The night I decided to crash the party, I thought I was about to pull off the ultimate surprise. I had overheard her on the phone a few days earlier whispering excitedly about a gathering she was planning for a friend's birthday. She didn't mention it to me afterward, not even once, but I convinced myself it was just supposed to be a small girls-only event. I figured showing up unexpectedly with flowers or champagne would be a cute, romantic gesture, something that would make her smile the way she used to. So I drove over without warning, heart pounding with the thrill of doing something spontaneous, something sweet. I even grabbed the flowers she liked, bright, wild colors, the kind she always said reminded her of summers at her grandmother's house. The street was packed with cars when I pulled up, and for a moment I hesitated. It wasn't the kind of quiet get-together I had pictured. Music pulsed through the walls, laughter floated into the night air, and lights glowed warmly from every window. I stood on the sidewalk for a second, clutching the bouquet, wondering if maybe I should have called first. But then I shook the thought away. It was just a party. I was just being thoughtful. What could go wrong? I made my way up the front walk, nerves buzzing under my skin. The door was slightly ajar, not enough to be inviting, but enough to make me think it would be okay to push it open. I stepped inside, slipping into the crowd unnoticed at first. Familiar faces mixed with strangers. Conversations bubbled all around me. It was louder, messier, more chaotic than I expected for what was supposed to be a simple birthday party. I moved through the house, scanning the crowd, searching for her face. And then I saw her. Not across the room, not surrounded by a circle of friends laughing over cake or drinks. No. She was outside by the patio. Standing too close to someone else. A man. She wasn't just talking to him. She wasn't just laughing at a joke. She was leaning into him, her hand resting lightly on his chest, her body language speaking volumes that no words could cover. And those red heels, the ones I had given her last year on our anniversary, the ones she had claimed made her feel beautiful, were pressing into the patio stones as she tilted her head back and smiled up at him like he was her whole world. The flowers slipped from my hand without me realizing it. Time slowed, stretching the seconds out into something unbearable. No one else seemed to notice at first. They were too busy drinking, dancing, living inside the bubble of their own small dramas. But as I stepped through the open patio doors, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter died off. Conversations stuttered into silence. Heads turned. I could feel every eye on me as I walked toward them, the weight of the moment pressing down until the air itself felt too thick to breathe. She saw me then. Her body stiffened, her hand dropping away from the man's chest like she could erase what I had seen simply by letting go. But it was too late. The truth had already burned itself into my mind, seared into something permanent and inescapable. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cause a scene. I just looked at her, really looked, and said, in a voice that was calm and clear enough to cut through the stunned silence, "Is this your book club meeting?" A few people laughed nervously, unsure of what to do, where to look. She opened her mouth, searching for an excuse, a lifeline, anything that would make this nightmare unravel back into something manageable. But there was nothing she could say. Nothing that could change the fact that she had chosen someone else. That she had lied. That she had believed I would never find out. She stammered something about it being a misunderstanding, about me blowing things out of proportion, but her voice was thin, desperate, the words crumbling the moment they left her lips. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I didn't need to. I turned around and walked back through the house, past the guests who couldn't meet my eyes, past the decorations and the half-eaten cake and the bright balloons that suddenly felt grotesque in their cheerfulness. I left the house, stepped out into the night, and closed the door on that chapter of my life without a single backward glance. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one fighting to hold something broken together. I wasn't the one clinging to hope while the foundation rotted underneath me. I was free. And no amount of lies, no amount of twisted explanations was ever going to change that. The night air hit me like a wave when I stepped off the porch, crisp and unforgiving, slicing through the last remnants of disbelief clinging to my mind. I walked to my car slowly, methodically, as if giving myself time to process everything I had just seen, everything I had just accepted. The street was still alive with the distant echoes of the party, but to me it all sounded muted, like noise underwater, meaningless now. I reached the car and leaned against the door for a moment, my hands gripping the roof as I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I thought about the way she had looked at him, the ease of her touch, the softness in her eyes. None of it had been meant for me. Not anymore. Maybe not for a long time. And the worst part was realizing how blind I had been. How many signs had I ignored, excused, explained away? How many little moments had I brushed aside because it was easier to believe in the person I loved than to face the truth about who she had become? I climbed into the car but didn't start the engine right away. I sat there in the dark, the cold seat pressing against my back, watching my breath fog up the windshield. I could have stayed. I could have confronted her, demanded answers, forced the truth out of her in front of everyone. But what good would it have done? The damage was done. The trust was broken. And no apology, no explanation could rebuild what she had so willingly set on fire. I thought about the flowers I had dropped on the floor inside, trampled by the same people who had witnessed my humiliation. I wondered if she would even notice them, if she would bother picking them up, or if she would just step over them like she had stepped over everything we had built together. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. No, I wasn't going back inside. I wasn't giving her another opportunity to spin her lies, to twist the narrative into something that made her look like the victim. I was done playing the fool in a story that had been rigged from the start. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, not looking back. The drive home was a blur, streetlights and shadows stretching out in long, meaningless ribbons across the empty roads. My mind wandered as I drove, skipping from memory to memory like stones across a lake. Our first date, when she had worn a yellow dress and laughed at all my bad jokes. The way she used to leave little notes in my pockets, scribbled reminders that I was loved. The nights we stayed up talking about our future, building dreams out of nothing but words and faith. Had any of it been real? Or had it all just been a convenient fantasy, something she clung to until something newer, shinier, more exciting came along? I didn't know. And maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that I knew the truth now. I parked in front of my house and sat there for a while, staring at the dark windows, feeling the weight of loneliness press against my chest. It would have been easy to let anger consume me, to let bitterness root itself deep inside. But as I sat there, a different feeling began to rise. Relief. Pure, simple, overwhelming relief. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't clinging to a relationship built on illusions. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the lies to catch up to the fantasy. It had already happened. The worst was over. And I was still standing. I got out of the car and walked up the steps to the front door. The house was silent, a sanctuary compared to the chaos I had left behind. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it for a moment, letting the quiet wash over me. No shouting. No accusations. No tears. Just silence. Just peace. I made my way to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, my hands steady despite everything. I didn't need to drink to numb the pain. I didn't need to drown it in distractions. I was ready to feel it. Ready to face it head-on and move through it, not around it. I stood by the window, looking out into the night, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to hope stir in my chest. Not hope for her. Not hope for what we had lost. Hope for me. For the life I could still build, unburdened by lies and betrayal. It wouldn't be easy. There would be days when the memories crept back in, uninvited and unwelcome. There would be moments when loneliness gnawed at the edges of my resolve. But I knew now that I had something stronger than comfort or familiarity. I had the truth. And with the truth I could rebuild anything. I took one last look out the window, then turned away from the past and toward whatever came next. Tomorrow I would start again. Stronger. Wiser. Free. The next morning, the world felt different. Not in a dramatic, life-altering way, but in a quieter, more honest way. I woke up without that heavy knot of dread in my chest, the one I hadn't even realized had become a part of me. The sunlight filtering through the curtains seemed less harsh, more inviting. The silence of the house wasn't oppressive anymore, it was comforting, like a soft blanket wrapping around me. I got out of bed slowly, letting myself move through the day without any urgency, without the invisible pressure of wondering what she was doing, where she was, who she might be talking to. I made breakfast, simple and unhurried, and for the first time in a long time I tasted the food instead of just going through the motions. It's strange how betrayal sharpens everything. How it strips away the illusions and forces you to see the world and yourself for what they really are. As I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and watching the world wake up outside, my phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't rush to check it. I didn't feel the immediate spike of anxiety that used to accompany every notification. When I finally picked it up, it was exactly what I expected, a string of messages from her. Some apologizing. Some accusing. Some swinging wildly between love and anger, trying to find something that would pull me back into the web. I read a few of them not out of curiosity, but out of a strange sense of closure. She said she didn't know what she was doing. She said it didn't mean anything. She said I had misunderstood everything. Typical. I set the phone down without replying and stared out the window again. I wasn't going to get drawn into another endless loop of blame and forgiveness, of promises made in desperation only to be broken in convenience. Not this time. The freedom I felt wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet, steady, like a river carving a new path after a dam had finally broken. I decided then and there that I wasn't going to waste any more of my life trying to fix something that had been broken long before I even realized it was cracking. I grabbed a notebook from the drawer and started writing. Not about her. Not about the betrayal. About me. About the things I wanted to do, the places I wanted to see, the kind of man I wanted to be now that I wasn't trapped in someone else's version of happiness. Travel. Learn a new language. Run a marathon. Start my own business. Small things. Big things. Things that once seemed impossible because I had been so consumed with maintaining a relationship that was draining the life out of me. I filled pages with dreams and goals, each word a small act of rebellion against the version of myself that had settled for less for so long. By the time I put the pen down, I felt lighter, like a weight had lifted off my chest. I wasn't running away from the pain. I was walking through it, step by step, one honest breath at a time. Over the next few days, I made changes. Small ones at first. Clearing out old clutter from the house. Rearranging the furniture. Getting rid of the things that reminded me of her, the framed photos, the little trinkets we had collected on trips, the notes she had once left hidden around the house. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because the space was mine now and it deserved to be filled with things that reflected who I was becoming, not who I had been when I was trying to be enough for someone who never really saw me. Friends started reaching out once they heard about what happened. Some offered sympathy. Others offered beer and bad jokes, the kind of healing only old friends can provide. I accepted their offers, letting myself be pulled back into a world that didn't revolve around betrayal and distrust. I laughed more than I expected to. I talked about things that had nothing to do with her. I remembered what it felt like to be seen, really seen, by people who didn't expect me to be anything other than exactly who I was. One night, a friend invited me to a bonfire on the beach. At first, I almost said no. It felt too soon, too exposed to step into a world that was moving forward when part of me was still catching up. But then I thought about all the nights I had spent waiting for texts that never came, for apologies that never materialized, for a love that had already slipped through my fingers. I wasn't going to wait anymore. I drove out to the beach, the windows down, the cool night air filling the car. The fire was already burning when I arrived, casting long shadows across the sand. People laughed, passed around drinks, shared stories. No one asked where she was. No one looked at me with pity. They just welcomed me in like I hadn't missed a step, like I belonged. I stood there for a long time, letting the warmth of the fire and the easy flow of conversation wash over me. I realized that healing isn't a single moment. It's 1,000 tiny choices. It's choosing to show up when you want to hide. It's choosing to laugh when you want to cry. It's choosing to build something new when everything inside you wants to cling to the ruins. I stayed until the fire burned low and the stars took over the sky, vast and endless and full of possibility. When I finally drove home, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt alive. I felt ready. The days blended into weeks, and with every passing one, the weight she had left behind grew lighter. It wasn't that I stopped thinking about what happened. Memories have a way of lingering, stubborn and persistent, but they lost their sting. They became just pieces of a story that no longer defined me. I spent more time outdoors, finding peace in the simplicity of it all. Morning runs through the quiet neighborhoods, hikes on trails I had once promised we'd explore together but never did, sunsets watched in silence from the edge of empty fields. Somewhere along the way, the anger faded. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, she hadn't earned that and I didn't owe it to her. It was something different. Indifference. A release of the need to understand, to dissect, to carry her betrayal like a wound that needed tending. I simply let it go. I let her go. One evening, while clearing out the last of the drawers in the hallway, I found an old envelope tucked between two books. Inside was a letter she had written years ago, back when things still felt easy between us. Words about forever, about promises and dreams. I read it once, carefully, feeling the sharp edges of irony cut deep, and then folded it back up and slid it into the fireplace without ceremony. Watching it burn was less satisfying than I thought it would be. It didn't feel like a grand act of closure. It just felt necessary, like cleaning out a closet that had begun to rot from the inside. After the ashes cooled, I stood there for a long time, staring into the empty fireplace, realizing that closure isn't something you find in dramatic moments. It's in the quiet acceptance that you deserve better than what was given to you. That night, I slept with the windows open, letting the cool air swirl through the house. No ghosts. No regrets. Just the sound of the world moving on and me moving with it. Invitations started coming in again, dinners, concerts, casual get-togethers. At first, I hesitated, worried about stepping back into the noise of the world, but every time I said yes, I built a new memory to stand where the old ones used to live. One Saturday night, at a small gathering, I met someone. Not in a movie scene kind of way, no fireworks or slow-motion glances across the room. Just a simple conversation over shared laughter, an easy connection that didn't feel heavy with expectation or comparison. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't trying to replace what was lost. I was just existing, open to whatever the universe decided to offer. She was kind. She listened. She laughed at my stories, not out of obligation, but because she found them genuinely funny. We talked about everything and nothing: favorite books, worst movies, the best cities to visit in the fall. I realized then how much of myself I had muted in my old life, how small I had become trying to fit into someone else's narrow view of who I should be. This time I didn't shrink. I didn't edit myself. I showed up as I was, bruises, scars, and all. And it was enough. As the night wore on and the group thinned out, she asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. Not drinks, not late-night desperation masked as spontaneity. Just coffee. Simple. Honest. I smiled and said yes. And I meant it. Driving home that night, I thought about how different everything looked now. The streets I used to drive with a heavy heart, the landmarks that once whispered of betrayal, they all seemed stripped of their old power. They were just streets again. Just places. I wasn't haunted anymore. I was free. When I got home, I stood outside for a while, looking up at the sky, at the endless stretch of stars. I thought about how close I had come to losing myself completely. How easy it would have been to let bitterness define me, to build walls so high that nothing could ever touch me again. But I didn't. I chose to heal. I chose to open the door to life again, even when it terrified me. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. And in doing so, I found something I hadn't realized I was searching for all along: myself. Not the version of me who had been shaped and worn down by someone else's neglect, but the real me. The one who laughed too loud sometimes, who dreamed big, who believed in second chances, not for others, but for myself. That night, I made a promise. Not to forget the past, but to honor the lessons it had taught me. To never again settle for half-hearted love. To never again fight for a place in someone's life when they had already made it clear I wasn't a priority. To be enough for myself first and foremost. I closed my eyes, breathed in the cool night air, and let it settle deep in my lungs. Tomorrow was a new day. And I was ready for it. The days continued to unfold like blank pages, fresh and unmarked, waiting for me to write something new. I poured myself into the things I had once put aside, small passions that made me feel alive, pursuits I had labeled as distractions back when my entire world had revolved around making someone else happy. I picked up my guitar again, letting my fingers stumble over the strings until old songs came back to life. I started reading the books that had been gathering dust on my shelves, losing myself in stories that weren't mine, but still somehow helped me find pieces of myself along the way. I traveled. Not far at first, just road trips to places I had always meant to see. The kind of places you plan to visit someday, but never actually do when you're caught in the slow erosion of an unhappy life. Beaches at sunrise. Quiet little towns with old diners and friendly strangers. Trails that led to nowhere but still felt like an accomplishment just for walking them. Everywhere I went, I left a little bit of the past behind, scattering the old heartbreak like ashes in the wind. It was not a dramatic transformation. It was slow, gradual, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't chasing anything. Not approval. Not affection. Not closure. I was just living. One evening, months after the night everything had fallen apart, I found myself back at the beach. Alone this time by choice. The sun was setting, painting the sky in strokes of orange and violet, the waves crashing against the shore in a rhythm that felt older than memory. I sat down on the cool sand, pulling my jacket tighter around me as the wind picked up, and thought about how far I had come. There had been a time when I thought I would never recover from her betrayal. A time when the pain felt so big, so consuming, that I couldn't imagine ever feeling anything else again. But sitting there now, with the ocean stretching out endlessly before me, I realized that heartbreak hadn't destroyed me. It had uncovered me. Stripped away the illusions and the compromises until only the real parts remained. Stronger. Smarter. Whole. I thought about her for the first time in weeks, not with anger, not with sadness, but with a kind of detached compassion. She had been a chapter in my story. A necessary one, perhaps. But she was not the story. She was not the ending. I watched the last sliver of sun disappear below the horizon and made a silent promise to myself. I would never again fight to stay where I wasn't wanted. I would never again hand someone the power to make me feel small. I would never again confuse comfort with love or loyalty with sacrifice. Life was too short to spend it trying to be enough for people who didn't know how to value what they had. I stood up, brushing the sand from my jeans, and took one last look at the endless sky. I was ready for the next chapter. Ready for whatever came next, whether it was more nights like this, alone but peaceful, or something new and unexpected waiting just around the corner. I didn't need to know what it would be. I just needed to know that whatever it was, I would meet it as myself, unapologetic, unafraid, and free. As I walked back to my car, the cool night wrapping itself around me, I felt a kind of quiet triumph settle deep inside my chest. Not the kind that shouts or demands attention. The kind that simply knows its own strength and doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. I was no longer the man who showed up at a party with flowers in hand, hoping to surprise someone who had already forgotten what it meant to be cherished. I was the man who walked away when the truth revealed itself, who rebuilt from the ashes without bitterness, who chose himself when someone else couldn't. And that, I realized, was the real victory. Not winning her back. Not making her regret losing me. But winning myself back. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking this road with me. If my story resonated with you, if you've ever found yourself standing at the edge of heartbreak wondering if you'd survive the fall, let me tell you this, you will. You already are. And if you're ready to keep walking forward, to keep choosing yourself even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, you're not alone. I'd love to hear your story too. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And if you want to be part of a community that believes in healing, in growing, in thriving after the fall, make sure to hit that subscribe button. This is just the beginning. And the best chapters are still ahead.